Fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We'll talk more soon.
I'm going to put on the positive side, right? Focus, take whatever it is you're making right now, and I'm telling you, we will see a completely different world, all right? Fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We'll talk more soon.
This really doesn't look like dinner.
Come on, somebody. Come on, so we're going to do really confident that we already know.
I can do some things to supplement what the education system is not providing.
Teammates, first and foremost, if this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the show. Great having you. Looking forward to having you back for more. To my regular listeners, you already know what it is. Number one show on innovative teamwork. Been that way for probably approaching about a year now since this show, the Move Swiftly podcast, has been the number one show on innovative teamwork. And I thank you all so very much for your continued support. There will be no shortage. There will be no shortage of material. We're going to continue to go, continue to grow, and continue to just give you the most incredible show, the most incredible, motivating show that you will ever listen to. Just constantly going, constantly just on point with everything that I'm talking about, whether it's myself or I have a guest. We do it all here. All right? And a couple housekeeping items before I officially move forward with today's topic. If you have not yet, make sure you join me Sundays, or whether it's myself, it might be just myself, but most of the time it's going to also have a guest as well. But every single Sunday, we'll be having a live stream on my YouTube channel, which is going to be NIL, which will be titled NIL and Transfer Portal Navigation. As you guys know, I just recently, as of this recording, put out a book named Transferring D1. I'm very, very heavy in the college athletic space. A lot of the ways I've learned business and I've been able to build this podcast and, produce the amount of content that I produce and build up the sports marketing company has been based on my experience as a collegiate athlete. And I'm pretty active in the NIL world, and I'm constantly taking lessons from what the college game and the collegiate athletics, and not just college, but pro as well. Constantly taking lessons from the game and applying it to business. So make sure you join me every single Sunday on the live stream. Submit your questions about the NIL and the transfer portal, and they will all be addressed every single Sunday. And those recordings also will most likely, I haven't decided if I'm going to do this yet, but most likely I will start to put those recordings on this podcast as well, in case you've missed it. And obviously on YouTube, they'll be available on YouTube as well. So even if you can't make it, you may watch it and, you may think of some questions to ask. Do not hesitate to get in touch with me in regards to all those kinds of things, especially you younger athletes that are really trying to navigate your way through this world, navigate your way through this collegiate experience, which I'm sure, which is a very, very difficult task. Trust me, I've been there. I've done that from player to coach, the whole nine. All right. Email is as1@d1transfer.com. Now let's get into today's topic, because actually that announcement is very relatable to what today's topic is all about. What we're going to be discussing today is the dilemma and the difficulties and the challenges that come with being a celebrity. All right. More in detail, more in particular, how difficult it actually is to become a Black celebrity. All right. Being a Black celebrity. And understand there's a difference between just having celebrity, having fame, having a lot of people know who you are, or constantly being questioned about what you do and things like that. And there is actually a difference in being a Black celebrity and having Black fame and all that kind of stuff. It's a really, really challenging task. And I'll just put this out there now. I am recording this about 2 days after Club Shay Shay, the famous podcast, the podcast that is, and I'm sure if you're a regular podcaster, regular podcast listener, if you're a person that regularly listens to podcasts, I'm sure you've heard of the podcast titled Club Shay Shay, hosted by Shannon Sharp, in which he did an interview. This is 2 days after he did the interview with Monique, and that interview hit about 7 million views on YouTube about a day after. This is just the day after, one day, or this 24 hours after it dropped on YouTube. The interview hit 7 million views, and then the famous, the huge one, Cat Williams interview. Last I heard, it was close to 70 million views. And that Cat Williams, as of this record, that Cat Williams interview was done about 2 or 3 weeks ago, probably around a month ago at this point. And between Cat Williams, who's a comedian, famous comedian, between Cat Williams and Monique, we're talking about close to 80 million views. All right, 80 million views with just 2 interviews. And he has shows. I've listened to several of the shows. When it comes to like the full recordings, I listened to the Steve Harvey one. Obviously, I believe he had D Wade on there as well. So I've listened to the show here and there, but obviously, I don't have time to listen to every single episode. All the episodes are 3 hours long. I have my own podcast to worry about. I have my own YouTube channel to be focusing on. I have my own articles that I write and all that. I'm a thought leader as well, former player as well. Not at Shannon Sharp's level, but at the end of the day, I don't have time to be watching every single one of his shows. But I do, when I do have some time, I catch the shows. And when it gets to the point where it has gone this viral, as a podcast host, as someone that's been hosting this podcast for 4 years now, I'm always curious as to what is getting people moving. How is it that his show has hit so many views? What exactly is he doing? What's the setup? What are some of the things that maybe I may be able to incorporate my show to get more views? Whatever it is, all right, I'm constantly learning. This is the key to this game. And there's a lot of people out there who are trying to get into this podcast game, trying to get into this YouTube game. And I tell them, you got to be consistent with your content. You got to be putting stuff out there every single day, publishing every single day, regardless of how many views you get. You got to be constantly publishing. So that's something I would strongly recommend you do. And you got to also be willing to learn from the people who are, being successful. So again, I'm a student. I'll sit back and I'll listen to see how Shannon Sharp may be asking questions. I'll listen to see watch and see how Shannon Sharp is relating to his guests and what he's saying. In fact, some of the reactions that I was watching, one of them was with Stephen A. Smith, and Stephen A. was like, look, he's a journalistic background, and he was kind of critiquing what he would have done if he was Shannon, all those things, So it's important that you're constantly learning, constantly taking notes if you really want to get into this game, all right? So anyway, when we're talking celebrity, and I got to thinking about this, it took me some time to really understand and think about this, and why is it that a Cat Williams interview and a Monique interview, the comedian Monique interview, would hit so many views. All right. Now, I'm someone who has had to deal with the same thing a Black celebrity would have to deal with his entire life. The only difference between myself and someone who's at, let's say, a Cat Williams, or let's say a Monique, is that I haven't received the worldwide fame, the worldwide celebrity. But at the end of the day, I've spent my entire life having to be called something other than my name. My entire life, I've had to be Black. My entire life, I've had to be Black, and I've had to have a funny name, and I've had to kind of put up a fake smile as to say, I had to be okay with it. I had to be okay. I had to be okay with people calling me something that wasn't my name, and them not actually having the permission to do so. Never has I been asked if, people can I call you this, or can I call you this specific name? All right. So that feeling that, constantly having a stage name, constantly having to be called something that you weren't asked to be called, or just constantly having to be looked at as different, as the different dude, I resonate with that feeling. I resonate with that feeling 1000%. And again, you're listening to someone that has gone from Black school to predominantly white school, went to a small liberal arts college, moved back home, went to a community college, worked, went to a public university, went online, had a ton of different jobs, and have met a ton of different people, and it's been pretty much the same. It's been pretty much the same. Everywhere I've been, it's felt like I have been on stage. I mean, I've had jobs where I've been the only guy there. I've been the only person there, with kids and trying to deal with that. And it the celebrity doesn't necessarily mean it has to have a worldwide effect to it. You can be a celebrity in your community, you can be a celebrity at your job, you can be a celebrity at your church, you can be a celebrity whenever you're that person that everyone is looking at like is different. That is actually the feeling that celebrities go through on the day to day. Now, again, if we're talking money, there's different facets to that as well. But when it comes to being a celebrity, it's really just about the fame and just being different, being on stage everywhere you go. Everywhere you go, you could be going to the grocery store. Again, you're on stage, constantly, constantly people looking at you, right? So what I gathered from, and again, I haven't watched all 3 hours of both these shows. I just caught the clips and where Cat Williams is going in on some major people, like really going in on people. And I caught a couple of clips where Monique was really going in on some people, just exposing a whole lot of truth, or what she says is true, just exposing a whole lot of stuff that has got the world like, oh shit, you didn't know this. A lot of comedians have a lot of things to say. And again, I haven't, and this is kind of a disclaimer, I haven't actually ruled out being a comedian because a lot of what I do requires public speaking skills, requires an ability to tell certain jokes or make light out of situations. So again, there's a resonation. Even when we're joking around as public speakers, there's always a level of truth to it. There's always a level of truth to it. You never know what someone's going through when they actually decide to make a living and say, yo, I'm going to make a living by making other people laugh at me. All right, there's a real place. Actually, I believe it was Kevin Hart who had a DVD or documentary where he started getting tearful. He started getting tearful when he was talking about his success as a comedian, where he was saying, look, these jokes come from a real place. It's not me just making people laugh. The jokes come from a real place. There was some real pain in my heart, and I was able to heal from it and get to a point in which I can tell the stories in a joking way and people laugh about it, but the jokes do come in a real place. That's where the line between education and entertainment is constantly going back and forth. There's always this kind of this line between when you're educating someone and entertaining someone. Me as an educator, these people are entertainers. There's always a mix. Constantly mixing the two. All right. So again, like I said, I've had to deal with this concept of being a celebrity. I had to deal with the having a stage name. I had to deal with as one is just different. As one, I'm my whole high school I was called Wani. I was called this first. I was called Crunk. I was called this. I was called Mr. A. There were situations in which people just put him on this pedestal. I don't really know his real name. There have been folks, not only, I'm telling you, there have been folks who I've known for years. I mean, years, who don't even know my real name. I mean, even members of my family would call me Ozzy. Like, it took them years to realize that my real name is actually Aswan the Crookshank. All right. So again, I've dealt with it. And in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, based on the numbers and based on what I saw in the Cat Williams interview and the Monique interview, is there's a desire. All right, there's a desire, because a lot of the reaction, a lot of the things that I've been hearing from the feedback and the reaction to the Monique interview and the Cat Williams interview and everyone that has put things together, the reaction has sort of been, this is tearing Black people apart. It's tearing Black people apart. And I've heard it so many different times. It's like in the Black community, this is happening, or in the Black community, we're the only group of people that do this to each other. As Black folks, we're the only ones that get on these platforms, get on these nationally well-known platforms, and tear each other apart the way that Cat Williams and Monique tore other Black celebrities apart. Just ruined them. I mean, ruined them with some of the stories that we're telling, especially if some of these things were true. If some of these things were true about what Monique was saying about Oprah, again, I personally would look at Oprah in a completely different way. I know a lot of people would. I mean, just the only group of people, again, this is what I heard constantly from, some of the feedback that I've been picking up from the show, from the reaction from the interviews, is that Black folks are the only ones that tear each other apart the way we tear each other apart. All right. Now, There's a whole lot of truth in that. There's a whole lot of truth in that. I'm gonna break all of it down for you in a second, because I too lived through I personally lived through a similar situation. I know exactly what people are insinuating when they say that. However, we can't just act like it's just black folk. All right. We can't act like it's just black folk tearing each other apart. It's not the reality. The truth is people love the drama. People love the drama. They love to see people be exposed, and that's just a way of getting people's attention. It's a way of getting people's attention. Now again, the solution, if you want to ask what the solution would be, the solution needs to be, we need to stop with the separation. We need to stop with the, okay, this is the black community and that's the white community and that's the Hispanic community and that's the Chinese community. All of us are one community. We live in one country. We live in a one world in the earth. We're the human race. I believe it was Dr. King. He said there's no such thing as this type of race. We're all the human race. Everyone is human. Everyone is going to be attracted and drawn to drama, or drawn to truth when something was wrong, or something thought this way about Oprah and then they found out this about Oprah. Everyone's going to be attracted to that thing. All right. That's going to happen. It doesn't matter the color of their skin. And what happens is when we start labeling it with a different color, we start isolating ourselves and making it seem like it's just black people doing this to black people, when the truth is it's not just black people doing it to black people. There's some white people who do it too. There's several white people who create this narrative as well. There's black folks who are full of shit. There's white folks who are full of shit. There's Hispanic folks who are full of shit. There's fucking Asians that are full of shit. It doesn't matter the color of the person. And too often do we try to make sense of all these things going on by putting it into one race and one ethnicity, and that tears us apart. That's what tears us apart more than anything. And I'll give you an example. When I was in high school, I was a sophomore in high school, all right? We had a brand new student that came into our, for those of you who don't know, I attended Good Counsel High School. At the time, it was in Wheaton, Maryland. Now it's Albany, Maryland. And we become a nationally known football powerhouse, all right? But when I went there, we were in the process of becoming what Good Counsel football has now become. We had our first All-American linebacker. His name, the late Akeem Hebron, was a senior. My junior. He was a year ahead of me, and we were now in the process of becoming what we see Good Counsel football becoming over the past 4 years, where we're always on ESPN, constantly putting guys out in major conference football and all that kind of stuff, right? So it was my sophomore year, and I had almost gotten into two fights. There were two situations in which there were other black students who I almost got into a fight with. There was one situation which I actually did get in a fight with somebody, and actually I'll tell you about that as well. Yeah, I'll just lay out all three. So the fight I actually got into, we'll start there. All right, the fight I actually got into, and all three of these fights, that the one I actually got into, and then the two fights that I almost got into with were all other black students. There were three other black students that there was a fight, or a possibility of there being a fight with. All right. And the one thing that was constant, the one thing that was consistent with all three of them, was you had other black people provoking the situation, and then you had several white boys who were just sitting back watching, wanting to see some action, or just happy to see two black folks fighting each other, two black men fighting each other. And it's the same fucking thing when we look at what's going on with Cat Williams and with Club Shay Shay and Monique and all that. Is we just love to see, again, black folk going at each other, because this narrative is continuing to be this narrative continues to be alive, in which it's just blacks tearing each other down, which, again, like I said, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with, but I'm saying, hey, why do we make it so it's only black folks doing that? Why don't we understand everyone does it? Everyone in every community, does not matter the color. We just got to stop doing it. We got to come to a place where we can now have conversation and stop throwing people under the bus on these national platforms. We got to start picking up the motherfucking phone and having conversations with people and settling it, and start to set an example. Because, again, as a teacher now, what I see as a teacher now, someone who teaches students that majority of these students are black, what I see them say to each other and how much they fight and how much they actually go at each other, it's disgusting. It's disgusting. But when I see kids do it, and then I look up and I see adults who are indulging in this kind of behavior, to where you get, again, grown ass black men and women who are going at each other, fighting each other, fussing at each other, I start to see the ripple effect and the triple down, the trickle down, how it trickles down into the younger generations and why things are so fucked up in this world. All right, so let me just get back. Let me, because I kind of got off topic there. But as far as what happened to me in high school, the first fight was, there was a situation. All right, I'll just break down, walk you through the whole situation. There was a situation in which we were walking back from lunch, and this is like the few black students that actually went to good counsel. We were walking back from lunch, and there was a bet placed. There was a bet, like a friendly wager bet placed, in which a friend of mine, I believe it was Sean, his name was Sean, told another student whose name was Larry. He said, "Look, Larry, I'll give you X amount of dollars if you were to punch Aswan in the face." That this is the guy. Well, he obviously didn't say Aswan. He said Wani, right? He said, "I'll give you several dollars if you punch Wani in the face." Again, this was the life of people like me who are constantly, they're just bullshit like this, just stupid shit like this, right? So I, kind of got a little serious because I didn't think he was actually going to do it. And when he, again, I'm the guy that says, okay, do it, right? So it started off as a friendly wager, and it's not like he cocked back and swung to hit me really that hard. He kind of lightly tapped me on the cheek, and I lost it. I fucking swung, like I swung on the motherfucker. We started going at it. We started, it was broken up in the hallway, right? So at the end of school, me and him, we settled it out. We went into the locker room, we scrapped it out. I whooped his ass. I don't give a shit what I whooped his ass, and we just went. I mean, it really wasn't, that big of a deal. He was kind of a scrawny guy, again, someone that was trying to prove himself. So we went at it in the locker room, and then at the end of the day, that was it. It was Friday. We moved on. But before I get on to the next situation, which was kind of a bigger situation, before we started fighting, here's what I noticed. Because understand, we went at it. We started going at it. It was like the last semester in school, and then we went back to class, and then we saw each other in the locker room. All I saw before we started fighting was a bunch of white boys just come into the locker room just so they can watch, because they want to see the whole thing. There were some people I didn't even know. And then after the fight happened, everyone in school was like, "Oh man, it was a fight." Everything was so hyped up. And this is the point I'm trying to make. I'm telling you, is that the world just simply loves to see that drama, that action. They think it's exciting, right? So that leads me into the second situation in which I almost got into a fight. The next two situations, the fight never actually happened. It was just more so some talking and some misunderstanding. And this is where things get serious, because it gets important, right? Because the next individual in which I almost fought, he became like one of the best friends I had on the team, right? It was actually my freshman year in college when I tore my ACL. He was the only one of my former teammates that actually reached out to me on Facebook and said, "Hey man, heard you tore your ACL. Best of luck to you. Come back stronger." All that, just reached out in general, right? His name was Kendall Haley. Shout out to you, Kendall. And I think back now about that situation, and I think about how much influence other people were having and how much they wanted to see two people who became very prominent members of the football team, who had very bright futures on the football team at Good Counsel, how much people wanted to see us two go at it, right? Because I remember what actually happened is we were in class and we just had again another argument. Again, high school boys just talking shit, had an argument, whatever, and that was the end of it. So as the next day after the argument came out and we were arguing, I guess the argument did get sort of heated. We were talking about rappers and shit like that, that stuff that, again, you would look at now as like, this is so fucking stupid that we're even talking about it. But anyway, the next day comes in, and there was another friend, or I don't want to call him a friend, but just another person, another one of the black kids at Good Counsel, who started hyping up this fight between me and Kendall. And then I remember him actually telling, because after it all died down, I remember we and him talked about it at we had to go to like a counselor or whatever. I remember Kendall even said the next day people were coming up to him, was like, "Yo, you're fighting Aswan today?" And even Kendall was kind of befuddled, like, what? I never said that. And I was befuddled too, because the person who told me about it told me, oh yeah, Kendall's trying to fight you and all that. So it was just a lot of misunderstanding, and there were people hyping it up. When I say people hyping it up, I mean there was an individual who would say there was a point where we would have like a assembly where everybody was in the crowd and the whole class was there. And the main individual, who was by the way, another black kid in the school. I don't want to put his name out there because he's really not worth having on his name. Really isn't worth being on a podcast as great as this one. But he would be the main one screaming out. He was the loudest one out of all of them. I wouldn't say anything. I never ever, again, Kendall and I never actually had a problem. He was, teammate of mine on the team and all that, but we never actually had a problem. It was him who had the problem with Kendall. But anyway, he would be screaming out, "Hey, steal him, Monty! Steal him, Monty!" So he would say that and it was what people were hearing was, okay, Wani, that was what they called me then. Wani's about to fight Kendall, and there was all this hype because, again, two black kids, two kids that were doing well on the football team, and two people that you would have wanted to see in a fight. So all this hype is going on. Myself and Kendall, we don't have anything to do with it. We never actually had a beef, really, other than the little argument that we had in class or whatever. But we're not backing down. You know what I'm saying? We're not backing down. So it got around school. Everybody's putting bets on it. Everybody's like, yeah, I'm gonna put my money up on Wani. If this one's, I'm like, gonna put my money up on Kendall. I'm judging him from the Larry fight. I'm like, it was like we were actual prize fighters. It was like it was crazy because there were people coming up to me, again, that I have never actually spoken to at all. And they're like, yeah, put this on, yeah, and there was so much hype going into that day. I believe it lasted for like a day or two or whatever, however long it lasted, however long that all that hype lasted. And then it was the last period of the school day in which we were actually gonna go at it or whatever. And I was pulled into the administrator's office. Kendall was pulled into the administrator's office, and we were told by the administrators, look, if you guys get in a fight, you're gonna get in a lot of trouble. I remember the administrator, Miss Nichols, she called my mother, and it was like, oh man, at that point I was on thin ice at good counsel, and having them contact my parents. I wasn't in trouble or anything, but they being the responsible adults that they were at good counsel, they were like, look, there's some rumors here, there's this, there's that, and we just wanted to prevent a situation from happening in which your son got in trouble and da da da. And so the fight never actually went down because it got so much hype that the teachers heard about it or whatever. And again, this is what I mean. It wasn't until the next day in which they made Kendall and I go and sit down with a counselor where I realized all of that was bullshit. All of that was bullshit. It was bullshit because the person that I used to hang out with a lot, the black kid that I was referring to, was screaming, steal him, money, steal him, money. He was the one that wanted to fight Kendall because Kendall was that guy that came into the school. He was taking all the girls. He took his position on the field. He was also a running back. And basically the dude that was hyping it up, he wanted to fight him, but he was scared to fight him. So he tried to send somebody like me to go fight him because, again, I wasn't the kind of guy. I was the focused guy. I wasn't really the guy that's going to be talking a lot and shit like that. So that's what talkers do. That's what the people, the probably 80, like the majority of people who get off on the Cat Williams and the Monique interview and all that kind of stuff, they're just people who want to see the drama. They never, they sit back and talk a bunch of shit, and they never actually put anything out there on their own. That's just what I'm saying. All right. So that was the second situation. Third situation was even more of a misunderstanding because here's what happened. It was a situation where it was another black guy. Again, all three of these situations was potentially going to be me versus another black guy, right? So it had a situation in which we were eating lunch, and this particular individual, his name was Andrew. So Andrew's girl at the time was eating lunch with us, and I didn't particularly like the girl. I didn't talk to her that often, but I didn't particularly like her, whatever. But anyway, we were eating lunch, and I'm assuming this. I know I didn't say it directly, but I'm assuming this is what happened. I might have said the word bitch. I might have said the word bitch. I might have said the word bitch to her. But I know for a fact I didn't verbally call her a bitch directly to her face, even though I did think that she was one. But I didn't actually say, hey, you're a bitch. All right, I didn't call her a bitch or whatever. What happened was, what got communicated to Andrew from his girl is that I called her a bitch directly. So again, what got around school was, oh, Andrew wants to fight Awani now, and then here we go. This happened like about a week later after the Kendall situation died down. Then a week later, it was like, now Andrew wants to fight Wani. It's crazy. It's like, God damn, is this fight Wani yet? Everybody wanted to, like, it felt like that because, again, it got communicated or whatever, however she might have said it, and he may have heard it as if I called her a bitch or whatever it was. Even though I did think she was one, I didn't call her a bitch directly. All right, I will say that. I know for a fact I didn't do that. But anyway, here's what happened. This situation kind of died down a little earlier, quicker because again, me and Andrew actually used to talk. We knew each other from freshman year, and he knew me. He knew like Wani isn't really the type of guy that's going to be that disrespectful to a woman, especially his girl. Even though again, I didn't particularly like this girl. For a fact, he wasn't gonna call her a bitch, or if he wasn't provoked, he wasn't gonna just come out and say, "Yo, you're a bitch." He knew that if I did say it was because he was provoked, it was there's some situation. So he called me that night. We ended up talking the situation out, and nothing actually became of the situation. In fact, when I saw him the next day, he just shook it up. He's like, "Look, Waddy, we good, man. I know you want to talk to me, but we good. Everything is good. We're good, right?" So, and I tell you all that. The reason I'm breaking all that down for you is because when you're dealing in this world, when you're in this world, you're talking about celebrity and you're talking about becoming famous and trying to do something, trying to be productive and all that kind of stuff. All that stuff comes with it. When people are paying attention to you and you're out there grinding, you're doing things that again nobody else is doing, that people have to come and pay attention and watch you do your thing. However it is you do it, you got to be ready for that kind of blowback. You got to be ready for people who you may think got your back, but really just want to see you fall and all that kind of stuff. And that is the takeaway, especially for my crew, the crew that listens to this show regularly. That's the takeaway that we got to take away from what we've seen in the Cat Williams situation, in the Monique situation, and all the hype and the blowback that it's getting. Understand what's hype and what's actually really happening. All right. So the takeaways and the main things, I'll lay it out plainly for you, is stay away from this concept. Stay away from this concept that Black people are the only ones doing this to each other, because that's not factual. That is not the case. What's happening is just a natural human reaction, a knee-jerk reaction towards any drama, anything new, anything that may breach a person's comfort zone, anything that somebody may take personally. These are the things that are happening, and people are simply reacting to it. It has nothing to do with a person's ethnicity or their color. It's just simply the way people react, and it just teaches you about human nature. All right. Understand that it's just human nature. Don't fall for this trap. Don't fall for the okie doke. We saw this actually again. I was a little too young to remember, but I heard stories about this is the kinds of things that they were being said about the OJ trial. All right. There was that group of there was a group of thought leadership Black individuals, the group of Black individuals who are saying, look, America got us going thinking it's a race war when it's not. It's about wrong is wrong. It's about somebody that killed somebody else. All right. Don't think, oh, it's just, oh, because he's Black, he's getting this treatment. No, we don't want to fall down the victim mentality. We want to fall into the mentality that you just simply are getting what you deserve. If you want to be a celebrity, if you want the fame, if you want to be doing something that's significant, this is all that comes with it. If you want to write your own check and be your own boss and have your own business and be able to do whatever the fuck it is you want and not have to work for somebody else, this is the kind of shit that comes with it. You don't get to be the person on the sideline. You don't get to be the person in the crowd. You don't get to be the person in the stadium just watching stuff. You got to be the show. You got to be the show, and you got to be willing to be the show and stand on your principles. Stand on your principles. Stand on your principles. Stand on your goals, and stand on the things that you want to do, and remove race from the situation. Just focus on the fact that everyone is a part of the human race. Like the good brother Dr. Martin Luther King said, we are all members of the human race, and everybody's human, and there's going to be human nature within the reaction of everything that we do and everything that we have as a society. There will be simply human nature reactions to what goes on and what gets said and how things happen. All right. Fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.